Think back to the moment, whether it was a health class, a pamphlet shoved in your hands, or a very awkward conversation with a parent, when someone first talked to you about safe sex. What did they actually say? Maybe they told you that condoms are always enough. Maybe they said certain things are only risks for certain people. Maybe they drew diagrams on a chalkboard and moved on in 10 minutes like it was nothing. Now here's the uncomfortable truth. A lot of what was taught, in schools, in homes, even in medical offices, was incomplete. Sometimes misleading. And in some cases, flat out wrong. Not because people wanted to mislead you, but because the science of sexual health has evolved dramatically over the last 2 decades. And our education systems? They haven't kept up. So today, we are going to fix that. Together. No judgment. No shame. Just honest, science-backed information, the kind you actually deserved to receive a long time ago. Welcome, everyone. If this is your first time here, this channel is dedicated to making health and science education accessible, accurate, and real. We cover the topics that matter most but are discussed the least. And sexual health? It is one of the most important topics affecting hundreds of millions of people worldwide, yet it remains one of the most undertaught subjects in formal education. Today's video is called, "Is Everything You Learned About Safe Sex Actually Wrong?" And I want to be clear, we're not here to alarm you or make you feel bad about what you didn't know. We're here to give you better information, starting right now. Here's exactly what we'll cover in the next 15 to 20 minutes. We'll look at why sex education has historically failed so many people. We'll examine 5 of the most widespread myths about safe sex and replace them with scientific truth. We'll walk through what real protection actually looks like according to modern medicine. And we'll explore how consent, communication, and regular health checks are just as important as any physical barrier method. Whether you're a teenager just starting to learn about this, a young adult who wants to be more informed, or someone who simply wants to make better decisions for their health, this video is for you. Let's get into it. Let's start with a question that might feel uncomfortable. Why do so many adults still carry dangerously incomplete information about sexual health? Why do college students, people who have been in school for more than a decade, still fall for myths that a 5-minute Google search could debunk? The answer starts in the classroom. Or, more accurately, in the absence of proper classrooms. According to the Guttmacher Institute, as of recent data, only about 24 U.S. states require sex education to be medically accurate. Let that sink in for a moment. Nearly half of American states have no legal requirement that the health information taught to students be scientifically correct. And globally, the picture is even more complex. In many countries, sex education is either entirely absent, taught through a strictly abstinence-only lens, or tied to cultural and religious frameworks that deliberately omit critical health information. A 2021 UNESCO report found that comprehensive sexuality education, the kind that covers consent, contraception, STIs, and healthy relationships, reaches fewer than 1 in 3 young people worldwide. 1 in 3 means the majority of the world's young people are stepping into their sexual lives without the information they need to protect themselves or their partners. So what fills that gap? Social media, friends, popular culture, and unfortunately, a lot of misinformation. Which brings us to the myths. Because before we can build better knowledge, we need to tear down what isn't working. Let's go through 5 of the most common myths about safe sex, the ones passed around in locker rooms, group chats, and even some classrooms, and replace them with what the science actually says. Fact: condoms are highly effective, but not 100% protective against all STIs. For infections transmitted through skin-to-skin contact, like herpes, HPV, human papillomavirus, and syphilis, a condom only protects the area it physically covers. That means exposed genital skin can still transmit or receive these infections. According to the CDC, Condoms reduce the risk of many STIs significantly, but their protective power varies by infection type. Using condoms consistently and correctly is still one of the best tools we have, but understanding their limits helps you make better decisions, like combining them with regular STI testing. Fact: this is one of the most dangerous myths in sexual health. The vast majority of STIs have no visible symptoms, especially in the early stages. Chlamydia, for instance, shows no symptoms in approximately 70 to 90% of women and 50% of men who carry it, according to the WHO. HIV can remain asymptomatic for years. HPV almost never causes noticeable symptoms, yet it is the most common STI worldwide. You cannot look at someone and know their STI status. Regular testing, not assumption, is the only reliable way to know. Fact: sexual health risks exist on a spectrum and are not determined by the number of partners someone has. It only takes one unprotected sexual encounter to transmit or contract an STI. This myth causes real harm because it creates a false sense of security in people who consider themselves low risk due to fewer partners, and it perpetuates stigma around STIs, making people less likely to test or seek treatment. STI rates are rising globally across all demographics. The only relevant factors are whether protection was used, whether both parties were tested, and how recently. Fact: hormonal contraception, including birth control pills, implants, injections, patches, and hormonal IUDs, prevents pregnancy. It does not provide any protection whatsoever against sexually transmitted infections. This confusion is extremely common and results in a significant number of people believing they are fully protected when they are not. Pregnancy prevention and STI prevention require different tools. Barrier methods like external condoms or internal condoms are currently the only contraceptives that offer meaningful STI protection. Fact: as we established in Myth 2, most STIs are asymptomatic. Waiting for symptoms before testing means you could unknowingly carry and transmit an infection for months or years. The CDC, the WHO, and virtually every major health organization in the world recommend regular STI screening for all sexually active people, regardless of whether they feel fine. The recommended frequency depends on your sexual activity and risk factors, but annual testing at minimum is considered the standard of care for sexually active adults. 5 myths. 5 corrections. And every single one of those corrections could make a real difference in someone's health and life. But understanding the myths is just the beginning. Let's talk about what real, comprehensive protection looks like in practice. Modern sexual health science is clear: effective protection isn't a single thing. It's a combination of practices that work together. Think of it like a safety net: the more layers you have, the more secure you are. Let's break this down. Layer 1: barrier methods. External condoms, when used correctly and consistently, are approximately 98% effective at preventing pregnancy and significantly reduce STI risk. Internal condoms provide similar protection and offer an option controlled by the receiving partner. Dental dams provide protection during oral vaginal or oral anal contact, an area that is frequently left out of sex education entirely. And here's something important about used correctly. Studies consistently show that typical use effectiveness, meaning how condoms perform in the real world, is lower than perfect use effectiveness, because people make mistakes. Putting on a condom incorrectly, using an expired one, or using oil-based lubricants with latex condoms all significantly reduce effectiveness. This isn't about blame, it's about education. Layer 2: PrEP and PEP for HIV prevention. Pre-exposure prophylaxis, known as PrEP, is a daily medication that, when taken consistently, reduces the risk of acquiring HIV through sex by approximately 99%, according to the CDC. Post-exposure prophylaxis, or PEP, is an emergency medication taken after a potential HIV exposure. These tools exist. They are accessible. And far too few people know about them. Layer 3: regular testing. Not just when you have symptoms. Not just after a scare. regularly, as a standard health practice, the same way you'd get an annual physical or a dental checkup. Layer 4, Vaccination. 2 STIs are now vaccine preventable. The HPV vaccine, recommended for preteens and available for people up to age 45, protects against the strains of HPV most responsible for cervical cancer, genital warts, and other cancers. The hepatitis B vaccine provides lifelong protection against that infection. These vaccines are genuinely life-saving tools that are still underutilized. Together, these layers form something far more powerful than any one measure alone. And there's one more layer that science consistently highlights, perhaps the most underrated one of all. Communication. We talk a lot about the physical side of sexual health. Condoms, pills, tests. But science tells us that one of the strongest predictors of safer sexual behavior is communication between partners. Couples who openly discuss STI status, testing history, and contraception before sex consistently report better health outcomes and higher rates of protective behavior. That's not just intuition, it's data from behavioral health research, and then there's consent. The word itself might feel familiar, but its full meaning goes beyond a simple yes or no. According to health and legal experts across dozens of countries, consent means freely given, reversible, informed, enthusiastic, and specific. It isn't a one-time checkbox. It can be withdrawn at any moment. And it applies every single time, not just the first time. Why does this belong in a sexual health video? Because psychological safety and emotional well-being are not separate from physical health. Coercion, pressure, and the absence of clear consent are strongly correlated with increased sexual health risks, including higher rates of unprotected sex, lower likelihood of open communication about testing, and elevated mental health impacts. Sexual health is whole-person health. And any honest conversation about staying safe has to include how we treat each other. Let's bring this to life with 2 realistic scenarios. These are fictional, but they represent situations that happen every day. Maya is 22 years old, in a new relationship, and considers herself responsible. She's on the pill, her partner seems healthy, and everything feels fine. What Maya doesn't know is that she contracted chlamydia from a previous partner over 8 months ago. She had no symptoms, none. No pain, no discharge, nothing unusual. She'd had no reason to suspect anything was wrong. Over time, untreated chlamydia silently caused what doctors call pelvic inflammatory disease, a condition that, in some cases, can affect future fertility. Maya's story isn't unusual. It's heartbreakingly common. And it didn't have to go that way. A single routine STI test, something she could have done in 15 minutes at a clinic or with an at-home test kit, would have caught it early, when a brief course of antibiotics would have completely resolved it. Regular testing isn't about distrust. It's about care, for yourself and your partner. James is 19, and he's about to be intimate with someone for the first time. He's nervous. He has condoms with him, but he doesn't know his partner's testing history, and he hasn't said anything about his own. He almost stays silent, because bringing it up feels awkward. Embarrassing. Like it might ruin the moment. Here's the thing. That conversation, the one that feels awkward, takes about 60 seconds. And the person worth being intimate with will respect you more for having it, not less. James takes a breath and says, "Hey, I want to be open with you. I got tested about 3 months ago and everything was clear." "Have you been tested recently?" That's it. No long speech. No accusation. Just honesty. His partner appreciated it. They talked. They made informed choices together. That 60-second conversation is one of the most powerful acts of sexual health protection available to us, and it costs nothing. Let's get practical. If you're sexually active and you've never had an STI test, or it's been more than a year, this is your reminder. Here's what regular STI testing looks like for most sexually active adults, according to CDC and WHO guidelines. Testing annually at minimum is recommended for all sexually active adults for HIV, gonorrhea, chlamydia, and syphilis. Cervical cancer screening, which detects HPV-related cell changes, is recommended every 3 to 5 years for people with a cervix, starting at age 21, depending on your country's guidelines. Testing more frequently, every 3 to 6 months, is recommended for people with multiple partners, people who do not consistently use barrier protection, or anyone with a partner who has recently tested positive for an STI. Now, where can you get tested? The options are broader than many people realize. Options include your primary care doctor or gynecologist, a sexual health or GUM clinic, often free and confidential, a Planned Parenthood or similar reproductive health clinic, telehealth services that mail test kits to your home, and free testing programs through public health departments. Many of these services are free or low cost. And in most places, they are confidential. There is no reason, logistical or financial, that should stand between you and a test. Getting tested is not a sign of something having gone wrong. It is a sign of someone taking their health seriously. Exactly like any other health check. We've covered a lot of ground. And I want to close this section with something that might be the most important idea in this entire video. Sexual health is not just personal. It's cultural. The reason myths persist isn't because people are careless or uneducated. It's because we live in a culture that treats sexual health as shameful or taboo, something to be whispered about, not discussed openly. That silence creates the environment in which misinformation thrives. When you get tested regularly, you model that behavior for people around you. When you have open conversations with partners, you make it normal. When you share accurate information, even something as simple as correcting a myth in a group chat, you contribute to a culture where people make better decisions. Change doesn't happen all at once. It happens person by person, conversation by conversation, and that starts with being informed. Which you now are, a little more than you were 20 minutes ago. I want to leave you with this thought. At some point in your life, someone handed you information about sexual health, or they didn't. Maybe it was good information. Maybe it was incomplete. Maybe it was laced with shame or fear or silence. None of that was your fault. You learned what you were taught. And you made decisions with what you had. But here's what I believe with real conviction. The moment you access better information, you deserve to be met with kindness, not judgment. Including from yourself. Sexual health is human health. Your body, your choices, your relationships, they deserve accurate science, real conversation, and zero shame. You came here today. You watched. You learned something. That matters. Take care of yourself. Take care of your partners. And keep asking questions, because curiosity is always the beginning of better health. I'll see you in the next one. Before you go, if this video gave you something useful, something you didn't know before, or something that made you think, consider hitting the like button. It genuinely helps more people find this content. If you have a question about anything we covered today, or a topic you'd like me to address in a future video, leave it in the comments. I read them. I take them seriously. And your questions often become future videos. And if you want more science-backed, honest, no-judgment health education, subscribe. That way you'll see the next video when it comes out. Thank you for being here. Genuinely. This community means a lot. Stay informed. Stay safe. And I'll see you soon.